I'm drawing on 20 plus years of experience there. I know the questions to ask. If you don't know the questions to ask, those tools can be slightly dangerous because you could be putting things in, getting answers back that you can assume are correct because you've got no reason to doubt them, but they aren't guaranteed to be.
And going back as a graduate, is there any advice that you'd give to young, or I say young, or even people who are kind of having, I guess, a career change, so to say, who are looking to start out in software engineering or within a technical role? Is there something you'd say focus on a specific area, or what advice would you give them?
Um, I'm a firm believer that anybody, and I've spoken to some people over the years who want to get into software development as like a career change, for example. I think maybe graduates don't necessarily have this problem, but it still applies to them too. There's no substitute for just for writing code and trying things. And I think, oh, through my career, the points at which the inflection points at which I've become a lot better at my job have not always, or I think potentially even very rarely, been driven by what I've been doing in my day job. Um, I've often took the time to sort of like learn about things outside of what I was doing in work. Build little projects, or not so big project actually. For a while, I did like self-employed work on the side, and I did build other things for other people that were different to what I was doing in work. I'm not saying everyone has to like, get a second job or everyone has to like take on side projects. That's not always feasible. That's not it. But I do think it's important that people have a passion for writing software, want to get better at it, and do take the time to think to do as much varied development as they can and learn about the extent of what's possible, not just necessarily what's in front of them. So if you're graduating from university, you've done like Java and JavaScript or Java and C++, go and learn a bit of PHP, go and learn a bit of Python, whatever. Like understand what's available to you and the tools that each sort of like approach gives you, not just languages, everything, databases, whatever, hosting platforms, doesn't matter. If you're transitioning into software engineering from a different role, I think that's even more important. To just to understand exactly what because a degree will give you that'll give you a bit of a flavor of everything. If it's a good degree, it should. So coming into a different role, don't just assume like, oh, I want to get a job in software engineering. There seem to be a lot of like JavaScript jobs out there. I have to learn JavaScript. There are other solutions, and they all have their place. And it's important to understand a broad section of them. I think like AI is also going to be a factor here because um, somebody coming into the industry now with what's available to them in terms of like ChatGPT or tools like that, Claude, anything you can talk to get answers back, which in the past you may have had to go and find a book or read a blog article on or something. You get that immediate answer now, which is fantastic, and I use it myself. I'm not knocking these tools in any way. They're great. I hadn't written Java in 20 years until the other day. I wanted to write a Lambda to do a task in work. For me to have gone back and brush up on my Java and figure it out myself would probably take me a good couple of days, maybe even a week, maybe longer. I don't know. But with ChatGPT, I could ask it questions. How do you do this in Java? This is how I would do it in PHP, or this is how I would do it in JavaScript. How do you do it in Java? And it was giving me the answers, and I could take that and I could assemble a Lambda from it. It works fine, great, not terribly complicated, but it was definitely faster to do it that way than it would have been if I did it all by myself. So that's important. But then I'm drawing on 20 plus years of experience there. I know the questions to ask. If you don't know the questions to ask, those tools can be slightly dangerous because you could be putting things in, getting answers back that you can assume are correct because you've got no reason to doubt them, but they aren't guaranteed to be. And that's going to be interesting where people are coming into this industry now without that experience, but having those tools available to them. How are they going to be able to navigate that landscape where they potentially have all this information available to them, but not necessarily the understanding of how to put it onto practice? That's a skill that they're going to have to learn. It's a skill that I won't have to learn, somewhat thankfully. But that's going to be interesting. And people who can do that really, really well, people who can harness that information, but also understand, when it works, when it doesn't work, probably going to get a bit of a leg up.
Yeah. My last question is, what technologies do you think will have the biggest impact in the next couple of years, and why?
Well, we mentioned AI, so that's out the way. I'm not gonna harp on with that.
You want to
Um,
start about that?
yeah. I mean, that's obviously the obvious answer, but um, something which I think it's a bit more of a woolly answer, um, but I think I worry a lot about the, the the way the world is going. Um, so sorry, this is going to sound really pessimistic, but like I think at this point in our sort of like in our lives, we've been lucky that the last, like say 30, 40, 50 years of computing developments have been on a very, very, upward timeline, the advances in CPU technology, like memory capabilities, they've driven this explosion in computing like power, and it's got us to where we are now with AI, GPUs supporting the kind of advancements we've seen in the last few years with LLMs and so on. Like, is that gonna remain consistent? There's a possibility that given the way the world is going, in terms of climate change, possibly on the horizon, a reduction in the amount of like materials that are available to us, like silicon, water, whatever it is, that could actually, for the first time in our lives, hamper our ability to develop technology and to improve technology. So the biggest, well, maybe the next couple of years. Hopefully, it's going to be a long time away. Um, Hopefully, even after my days. But at some point in the horizon, there could be a point where it's actually not what technology is coming that will change our lives. It's actually what lack of technology. Like all of a sudden, perhaps memory won't be as plentiful as we've been accustomed to it being. Maybe CPUs won't be as plentiful. We're seeing that already with constraints in the sort of like supply chain for GPUs for AI. What happens if all of a sudden you can't just like throw a CPU at it? What happens if you can't scale loads of machines to cope with demand? Do we then adapt the applications we're writing to make them simpler for the first time, and try take back a lot we've given people? Do we try to maintain it, and if so, does that mean we use different techniques to provide these applications? Does the language we use matter now? Languages like that now maybe are slower than others, like say Python over being slower than C++. All of a sudden, do we shift to being C++ engineers because we have to do more with the tools and resources we have available to us? We might find that we start to walk back some of what we've done recently because it was easy for us. All of a sudden, maybe it isn't so easy, and we have to change our approach and go a bit and remove some of the abstractions we've built up over the years and shift back to being closer to bare metal and and make it easier for us to develop applications that maintain the experience we're used to, but do it in a performant way. That's a possibility. Hopefully, it won't come to pass. Hopefully, we'll find some way to address all those potential problems that might come up. But that's something I could maybe see as being something that we might want to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting. I've not heard that answer as of yet, and kind of going back to basics as well makes sense. But like you said, hopefully it's not in our lifetimes anyway, and we can kind of future-proof that for the future generations. So no, look, really appreciate you coming on as well, and thank you so much for answering these couple of questions for all of our kind of listeners. I hope it's really beneficial to everyone, and yeah, thanks for jumping on.
No problem. Thank you for having me.